Hey, good morning to everybody and happy Friday. It's Daryl here. It's coming up on 6 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I want to talk about, every day I lay into the Trump supporters and I wonder how they could vote for this man, how they could vote against their own best interests. And I rail against them every day. And I got to be fair today. I made a video about 3 days ago concerning tuition costs and schooling, and it got me thinking. Thinking back to 1980, 1980, no, 1984, 1984, and 1988. First time I ever voted was 1984, and the second presidential election was 1988 when I was 22. And who did I vote for? I voted for Ronald Reagan. My whole family back then, it's funny, it was opposite. My entire family was hardcore Democrat, and I was the only person voting Republican. Now it's completely turned around, and they're all voting for Donald Trump, and I'm the only Democrat. Interesting how things turn out. Anyway, I thought back to who I was and what I was thinking back then. So when I was 18, and then again when I was 22, by 22 I really should have known better. But this I remember, and I remember thinking back. I remember rushing. I think it was snowing on one of those days, or the weather was terrible on that one November. I don't know if it was 1988, and I was trying desperately to get to the polls to make sure my vote was counted for Ronald Reagan. And I think back on why I wanted to vote for Ronald Reagan. And to be honest, at that time, I saw Republicans as being a little more wealthy, a little more well off, a little more successful. At 22, I had just graduated 2 years of technical school and gotten hired in an architectural firm with a prestigious architectural firm with the guys who graduated out of Yale and all these other big schools. And I really thought I was something back then. And thinking back, it was all about ego. It really was. If I'm going to be honest, I was thinking how I would look to everybody else. How I could say that I voted for Reagan. How it would make me look. I'm serious. I do remember thinking this. And the other day when I started talking about it, I looked back and I started investigating into because I was young and I didn't know a whole lot what was going on in politics back then. And I looked back to what was actually occurring and what Ronald Reagan's policies were. And I'm just dumbfounded that I was voting for this man. As I was going to school, paying for myself, trying to get my first apartment and all that, I was basically voting against all my own best interests for tuition assistance. I had a hard time paying tuition. It was probably directly related to Ronald Reagan's policies back then. I mean, I smile about it now, but I don't remember considering his exact policies at all. Back then, I looked at it like a team. It's a team. I'm going to pick this team, because this is the cool team. I remember thinking like that. So it makes me think. Maybe it gives me a little insight into. I'm sure there's Trump supporters out there, and a lot of them probably aren't all that young. I'm willing to bet there's a lot of them out there that feel the same way right now. They want to be part of the group that's voting for the ballsy woman's man, the billionaire that likes to grab ass, and how it's going to make them look like a rebel, like they're bucking the system. And all the while, not realizing a lot of these people are animal lovers, live out in the country. They love wildlife and the environment, and they have no clue as to Trump's proposals and what he's doing, cutting back regulations and all this stuff. And, they think they're voting for the superhero, the macho superhero who's going to buck the system and put Hillary and the Clintons in their place. And I have to admit, that was me, man. That was me back in the Reagan years. So yeah, I guess, well, I mean, we all we all have our down points. So at least it helps me relate maybe a little more, or maybe I could be a tad more understanding and compassionate. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Compassionate to Trump supporters. Now that I really didn't remember this before until I started doing some researching just the other day, and I was ashamed and dumbfounded that who I was voting for and why I was voting for him. I think in the following election, I remember voting for Ross Perot because he was bucking the system, another billionaire bucking the system. I think he was an independent. But we'll save that for another video. All right, you guys have a good Friday.